6:04, I'm calling to order this regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Bandera. All council members are present with the exception of Darcy Hasty. Our city secretary is here, thank you, our marshal is here, our code enforcement officer is here, Jimmy Allen, and here to observe only tonight is our future city administrator, Terry Byrd. That being said, let's move on to item 2, the invocation and pledge of allegiance. If you would please all rise, and Will, would you please lead us in prayer?
Most gracious and loving Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us all together this evening. Thank you for this glorious day that we've had today, Lord. Hope this is the first of many before summer gets here. Lord, thank you for all your many blessings you've bestowed upon us. Most of all, thank you for your Son who died upon the cross for our many sins. We ask your blessings upon everyone in attendance and upon the Bandera City Council. We ask for your prayers and blessings upon our nation in these troubled times, Lord. Please forgive us for our many sins and save us in heaven when the time comes. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 is visitors to be heard. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the City Council. Presentation should be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Individuals not able to attend due to space limitations may email City Secretary at least 2 hours prior to the meeting and provide your comments to be read. This is the last meeting that we will be having this 2-hour window for emails. We're now open to the public. There's plenty of room in here unless something happens and, we get bombarded. Has anyone signed up to speak, Jill?
No, ma'am.
Have you received any emails from citizens?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Item 4 is the consent agenda. Item A, approval of the minutes for the February 23, 24, 2021 special meeting, the February 24, 2021 special meeting, the February 24, 2021 Board of Adjustments meeting, the March 1, 2021 special meeting, the March 4, 2021 regular meeting. Item B is approval of the resolution number 2021-005, supporting the application of the Bandera County Historical Commission to the Texas Historical Commission for the designation of the City Water Tower and Limestone Operations Building as a registered Texas Historical Landmark. And item C is the acceptance of Laura Lasoya's resignation from the BEDC, Bandera Economic Development Corporation.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Rebecca makes a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Christine seconds. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you, council. Item 5, discussion of possible action on the following items. A is a presentation by Code Enforcement Officer Jimmy Allen about updating the building codes in the codes of ordinances. Jimmy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
You had asked the city attorney to be on Zoom for this item, and he is on Zoom.
Okay, so Dan is available if we have questions.
Yes.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Thank you for having me. This isn't a strange topic. It's been brought before, so hopefully we can hash out any questions or comments you guys might have on this. Did everybody get a chance to read the letter that was presented to y'all? I don't want to take up your time by reading it myself, so I wanted to start off by saying, does anybody have any questions that we can address first and foremost about it?
Okay, well, we've spoken a little bit about this, and I
Yes,
know that Dan Santee, city attorney, is aware. I am curious to know if Matt Lewis with Simple City is on the Zoom, just because he might have some relevant input as well. But my question, as we discussed, is related to the need to amend the code of ordinance, what do you call it?
IBC,
Yes.
International Building Code.
Yes. So I would really appreciate input and discussion
Sure.
around that. I don't necessarily need to lead it, but
Yeah,
wanna hear
no,
your thoughts.
and I understand where it's coming from, doing the amendments. And the problem is, I think we should adopt the 2015 International Building Code from what we're at now at the 2003. And I know it sounds like a big jump, but we're 6 to 8 cycles behind where we should be, 18 to 24 years from the low end to the high end behind on our codes. And there's several different reasons we need to move up, and I'll get into those in a minute. But as far as the amendments, I would like to see us adopt this code and then go after any amendments as we go through this thing. If we come across them, then we can address them individually, because the book is it's so entailed, and there's so many details and chapters and sections in there. It would take an astronomical amount of time to sit down and go through all of them and then figure out what we do want, what we don't want. It'd be a lot easier to just go ahead and adopt it and then do it as they come in front of us. That being said, we've had the 2003 building code since 2014 from what I could see. And what I also was unable to find is any amendments that have been done to that one since we've adopted it. So I don't think it's going to be a big of a problem as it sounds like it's going to be. And the 2015 code book compared to the 2003 code books, only a difference of maybe 15 to 20 pages. And that could be a difference of font and definitions. So it's not that big of a difference. And from what BV's telling me, the main difference between them is the environmental code. That's what changed a lot. And with what's going on in the world, you know why they're real big on environmental stuff. And I agree 100%. But it's not going to affect the way it sounds like it's going to affect jumping up that many chapters. Now they're fixing to come out with the 2021 code, and I don't recommend going all the way up there because we don't want to be up there with everybody when they're trying to iron out the bugs and stuff. 15's comfortable. 15's what BV's telling me that everybody's using right now, and we're probably one of 2 cities in the state that he said is still on 2003.
Could I hear Dan's comment to that particular? Dan, what do you say to that?
No.
Hang on one second, Dan.
Oh, test.
Okay, can y'all hear me now?
That's a little better.
A little better? I'm not going to scream at my computer. The neighbors might get concerned. But, and also,
That's
first
better.
of all, welcome, Administrator Byrd. Look forward to meeting you. And also, hey, thanks, Tony. You're my hero. I can see out of both my eyes today. So,
Welcome.
so on the code issues, and also I emailed.
No.
That wasn't me, I promise. I emailed Mayor, I emailed you and Rebecca, as well as Jill, a link to the North Texas Council of Governments page where they do all the local amendments. Now, we don't have that available at ACOG. I've reached out to ACOG to see if they want to, undertake that process to make that available to all the cities. But I honestly don't recommend adopting any codes until you have your local amendments prepared for adoption at the same time. And, the problem that you're going to run into is, as we've discussed, your housing stock in Bandera is on the older side that's within the city limits, and especially our downtown buildings. They're going to fall under the existing buildings code, and it's going to be challenging for them, particularly on fire code issues. If you don't do local amendments, we've seen some examples of that. You can't address this when it comes before you. You're going to find out about the issues when BV comes out and they fail somebody on an inspection because they can't meet the code that you've adopted, whether it's 2015 or 2018. Actually, a lot of my clients are adopting 2018 right now. I don't have any clients adopting building codes without adopting local amendments at the same time, so we don't get our code enforcement officials and our inspectors in a tough spot, and you have things that have to come before your Board of Appeals. I don't think it's that onerous. I think it is possible to do. I've sent you the links. They have the amendments for every code going back as far as your code, actually. I would encourage, this is a great conversation to have, but I would encourage, before you adopt anything, to at least go to that link and see what their regional local amendment recommendations are. See if any of those make sense for Bandera before reinventing the wheel. If you were going to have to stand up a committee to review every page of every code to come up with local amendments, I guess that would be one thing. But there's other resources other than just the North Texas COG who've already done that work for you. It's just a matter of reviewing and seeing which local amendments make sense for Bandera. And I know the council's fully capable of doing that. I know the code enforcement officer is fully capable of doing that. And that would be my recommendation.
Council? Tony?
Oh, I'm here writing lots of notes because I don't know a lot of stuff. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Jimmy, both. I know this has been an issue for quite some time because we do have lots of different things that are causing people a lot of struggles and a lot of angst. Code enforcement is not easy, we know that, and we know that our ordinances are even harder. So what I think I hear Dan saying, which I think is a very good idea, is to, because we're kind of in the process, it's sort of a momentum that we're doing right now, looking at our ordinances, is looking at the ordinances and the building codes at the same time and kind of have a process to approve them and move them forward and bring them to a modern point at the same time. I think that would help. And then I don't know what the process is with Bureau Veritas, Jimmy, so pardon my ignorance if something I suggest is not applicable, or please correct me and we'll move from there. But to me, it is always should be a process where a person applies for a permit and all of these things are considered. The building that they are trying to be good stewards to maintain, the fact that our building codes are out of date, the fact that our ordinances are out of date, and it should be a process of people working together to find a solution as a win-win. And how do we do that with Bureau Veritas? When we turn it over to them, are we removed from the situation, or do they come back to you before they deny something? Or, I mean, is that a possibility?
What happens with BV is when somebody's turned in their plans or project information, it's sent to plan review at Bureau Veritas, and David Shulak, who's my go-to for a lot of this information, recommended the 2015 and also said that the only problem that he's heard of people amending is very, very small issues, like a plumbing issue, because people have to have water fountains, and it's something simple that we can just send them an email from the city, from myself, saying, hey, as a city, we're not going to require them to have the fountain, and he'd be okay with that. If it was something major, let's say somebody wanted to bypass the fire suppression system or something, and I say, no, you still need to have that, and they want to argue with me, well, that's something we can bring before you guys and the Board of Adjustment and let y'all be the final say whether or not they have to do it or not. But if I've submitted everything to him and he's got questions, he emails the contractor and says, I need A, B, and C from you. And they usually send me the correspondence back and forth, because when you have too many people passing on information, it gets lost in translation. So once everything's finalized and BV's happy, they send me the approval plans with all their footnotes on it and everything, and then I make sure everything falls in place.
Okay, so that part of that is concerning because of I think I said this in a meeting very recently in this room, was that the reason for codes and ordinances and laws, as you well know, being in law enforcement, is that there was an extreme loss of money or an extreme loss of life. And so that's the reason that the codes are in place. And so a lot of that is a little overkill because of some of the projects that we've tried to accomplish. They try to put a square peg in a round hole, in that, you try to build a park and they're trying to get you like an indoor skate center and they're trying to hold you to that criteria. So sometimes logic does not come into play. And I do know that probably why Bureau Veritas is pushing this is because we've hired them to mitigate the risk, is for them to be the intelligent ones on the subject, be the professionals, and they want the most recent codes and ordinances so nothing comes back on them. They inspected something per fire code. If something goes wrong, it's going to be on them. You know what I mean? So I understand that part, but I wonder is there a way to work a little better with, is there something that you've noticed that we could work better to reduce the angst and get us through this and to get us to a point where we're level?
As far as adopting the new codes?
And the ordinances and all of that at the same time. Are there issues that you're having right now, I guess, that are...
Issue I'm having now is, contractors call me and ask what code version I'm using so they know which one to follow, and they're shocked that I tell them 2003 and 1997. And I've been telling them, Bureau Veritas inspects off the 2015. That's what they go off of. So, and that's what they're used to working off of. So I've had real good rapport with them, and they usually do it off the 2015 anyway, because that's what, like you said, that's what BV uses, and it keeps people from having to flip back and forth. But what I'm ultimately trying to do is protect the city and its pocketbook. So if something does happen that's major, we're not sitting somewhere waiting for a deposition to explain why we're so far behind on our codes. It's got a real high liability issue, and not to mention the insurance service office, the ISO, gives a rating for each city, and if we've got a real poor rating because our codes are outdated, then our insurance rates are going to drop for businesses and residential.
Okay.
Tony?
So I have one more question, if
Go
you
ahead.
don't mind, for Dan, actually. So Dan, with all that information said, I mean, you're the one that clearly handles the mitigation part of everything. With us adopting the 2015 and then taking the onus on the council to grant an amendment or a variance or an adjustment for individual cases, what greater risk does that put us at rather than keeping it the way it is?
So, okay, there's two parts to that, right? So the way this typically works in other cities is that when you adopting the code is fine, but what you have to understand is that when you adopt the international code, that's not going in your code of ordinance. That's a standalone book or document. Your citizens may or may not be able to access that online. I don't know if you keep a copy of it in City Hall or not. Within that document, it has all the processes for, that's where the processes for stop work orders are. That's where the processes are for appeals to the Board of Appeals that sits and hears those things. It's not the Board of Adjustment, that's zoning. It's called the Board of Appeals. Within your local code, though, is where the local amendments go, where the local amendments to the building code go. And the reason why you adopt those ahead of time or adopt those when you adopt the regular code, and I've sent many, many examples previously. In fact, I met with Mayor Pro Tem Gibson and Councilmember Morse a couple of years ago, at least a couple of years ago, and covered all of this same material and provided all these same examples. So this, as the code enforcement officer said, this is not new. The reason why you do that then is so that everybody knows the rules you're playing by, and you don't have to depend on whether or not you know whether or not to appeal something to the Board of Appeals. And you might get a different decision depending on what the situation is or who sits on that board. The local amendments are meant to address the most common issues that are found within your community. And your community may not be like a community in the Metroplex or a San Antonio suburb, because it's based on your building stock and the average age of your commercial and your residential structures. And so, it's again, you wouldn't be starting from ground zero. Obviously, you can go ahead and adopt the codes and come back and adopt local amendments. Just easy enough to do it. What I've heard already is they're already inspecting to 2015, even though that's not required. So if I come in there and build to a lesser and I get failed on my inspection, I think I'd have an issue with that, because that's not what your codes are right now. So, I mean, definitely you need to adopt updates. I'm honestly, I'll tell you, I'm not really concerned about doing what's convenient for Bureau Veritas. I'm interested in y'all adopting what's best for your citizens, including the local amendments.
Right. Thank you, Dan.
Dan, I have a quick question. We had discussed the existing buildings ordinance. Would that be a local amendment, or is that something
No,
we
that's
could
a code.
adopt separately right now?
Yeah, the existing building code is part of the international codes. It's called existing building, and it's meant to help and address the most common issues among existing buildings that are older, and it does not require all the same standards as new builds would require. But again, there's also recommended model local amendments for that as well. The local amendments, what those are going to address, folks, are going to address often will address the fixtures that go in bathrooms, for example, the penetrations allowed in rooms, the amount of light required, the energy code provisions. I sent an example to the mayor earlier this week I'm working on amendments to the fire code in Schertz, Texas, and we're updating to the 2018. I'm working with the fire chief, and we had pages and pages and pages and pages of local amendments that provide some relief for the businesses there. And it's not about lowering the level of safety to those who are occupants of those buildings. It's more about adapting that code that is truly not, it's an international code. It's not gonna fit every single circumstance, but it's to fit it to what you guys know you have on the ground in Bandera, Texas. And we've gone through this once out there, at least once, with one of your property owners trying to bring up to present day codes one of your older buildings out there that's a bar and dance hall. And, those are large occupancy buildings, and to outfit those all the way up to a 2015 or 2018 fire code it's not going to happen because it's going to be cost prohibitive. That doesn't mean it can't be made as safe as possible. Now, just because you adopt local amendments doesn't mean that they're even going to be able to or want to meet those. They still have the option of appealing to the Board of Appeals and saying that they have a reasonable safety alternative that is even more lenient than what those local amendments would be. So that option doesn't go away. You're still going to get those one-off cases every now and then, but it should eliminate a lot of the most common things so that Bureau Veritas isn't having to pick and choose which codes they're going to, inspect to, and it's uniform across the board. That would be the hope.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, ma'am.
Dan, there's a statement. Oh, I just lost it. Hang on. Do you have our ordinances available to view?
I can pull them up.
I'm looking at 302051. There's a statement that reads, if and when the 2003 edition of this code is amended or replaced by subsequent editions of the code, those subsequent additions shall be the building code of the city without the necessity of amending this chapter. Can you help me understand that? And what does that mean? And if that is the case, just help me, please.
Yeah,
with that.
so I can't help you with that. I did not do that, and I wouldn't recommend that. That's like me saying, hey, we're going to adopt this ordinance, and if anything ever comes along that makes it better or change in a different way, we don't have to adopt it again. You do have to adopt your building codes. You have to adopt new versions when they come out if you want to update them. Otherwise, your citizens only have to meet the version that was actually adopted. I don't agree with that you just have to adopt it once and it automatically updates. Otherwise, you'd be on 2018 right now.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that when we do this, you're going to omit that statement.
Yes, when we do this,
good.
we need to update. This is just one of the examples in your code that, yes, it does need to be addressed.
May I?
Please do.
Thank you. Matt Lewis, are you there?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I am here.
Hi. I would appreciate a little input from you, from your perspective, and how this relates to our new zoning ordinances and all of the work that you're doing for us. And I don't know if you've ever met Jimmy, our code enforcement officer. Jimmy, Matt, Jimmy.
How you doing, Matt?
Nice to meet you, Jimmy. And welcome, new city administrator, Jerry, as well. So this is a really important conversation you all are having on the table. And I can understand that safety is at the forefront of the conversation. And furthermore, it seems that the inspection and builders are both adhering to 2015 standards. So in some manner, you're already achieving buildings that may be being designed and constructed under 2015 standards. And you have, older codes than that. We are in the process of creating a community vision through the comprehensive plan, and we're going to code that comprehensive plan into the land development code. And we believe, this is a policy level decision, and we will work with your staff as we progress through this to assure that there's alignment from both the local amendments and whatever, international codes that you adopt. We think that local amendments, as stated, are really important to make sure that the character of the community is captured. But I believe this is just a real policy level decision, knowing, what we know and understanding what the construction standards are. We're here to help in any manner, and we're going to work with you all to best integrate either possibility into the new standards as we draft. And we will surely work with Jimmy and his team as we work through these efforts.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, I don't want to let this just die right here. I'd like to,
I was gonna ask if this is something that y'all are gonna do, per Dan, and which I'm all supporting whatever you guys decide. I just don't want it to see it die here like it has been. We need to follow through with something and get this thing done, because it's been a lingering issue, and I'd hate to be on the wrong end of a civil suit because of it.
well,
So
Yeah,
I want to interject though, because just can't let that go. This is the second time Jimmy said something like that, and the city is not going to be liable because of what codes you have on the book. And that needs to be clear. There's only specific things that you can sue a municipality for. So that this decision should not go forward based on that statement.
It'd still be embarrassing.
thank you, Dan. We can talk about a workshop, we can talk about,
Let's
Oh.
schedule. Let's not talk about it. Let's do it.
well, yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Okay,
What are you doing tomorrow?
I'm busy tomorrow, thank you. So, council, we'd have to have another workshop in the near future with the EDC once we have all of our promotional funding applications in, which are due by the end of next week. Then the following week is Easter, so if y'all want to schedule something between the first and second meetings in April.
That's fine, but I would just like to say, in the meantime, I'm gonna be doing my research. I know that there are towns around that have already done local amendments, so we have a lot to help guide us. And like Dan said, the email that you sent this afternoon, Dan, with the information from North Central Texas COG, I did forward that to Jimmy as well. So I hope that if this workshop is gonna be scheduled in April, that everybody can come to the table with their input and how we're gonna make this happen. Because I would just like to see this get adopted and done as soon as possible.
Our meetings are the 1st and the 15th in April. We could schedule a workshop earlier prior to the meeting. And by that time, Mr. Byrd will be on board and we'll have his input into this, and we can do some more research. And don't try to find anything at Lakey. There's not, I've already looked. But just so there. But anyway, yeah, if y'all would be willing, we could meet at 5 o'clock on the 15th before our meeting for a workshop, and then we'll put another agenda item on the 15th agenda.
Okay, I just hope it's ready to be adopted by then. I mean, that gives us a month to have it done and ready for adoption.
Yeah, and please look carefully at the existing building code. I think that's the answer to a lot of our concerns. The existing building code, if a new owner buys this building, then it has to be brought up to the codes of the year that it was built, unless there's some glaring, like.
18.
Yeah.
I think there were a couple of things that Dan brought up that I think we need to keep in our head, is that the point of this is not to allow a building owner to maintain a building at substandard level. That's not the reason we keep it in the old code. And the reason to prevent us from bringing it to the new is if we did do that, somebody could come with a reasonable resolution brought to the table that says, this is my building, these are my constraints, and this is what I'm proposing that is a safe, viable solution within the intent of renovating the building to a better standard than it is, and we have the right to accept that.
Well, let's take that into the
So I'm just
consideration
saying,
of the
I
workshop.
think those 2 points were, pretty key in
I agree.
decision-making.
Rebecca?
You don't have a copy already of the 2015?
No, and I'm lucky to have the 2003. They don't really make it anymore, according to my source. And Jay luckily left me with a digital copies I've been using. So most of the contractors don't even have access.
Yeah,
Can you go ahead and,
previously, oh, go ahead.
I was hoping that Jimmy could go ahead and buy the code so we can read it. How are we gonna amend it if we can't read it?
I was going to suggest that very thing. I think a previous code enforcement person bought the 2012 codes, but they don't seem to be in the office anymore. So,
Jerry had his hand up.
just here.
Hey, have you seen the 2015 yourself?
No, what I did was kind of pulled up how big they were because I was trying to compare, how much has actually changed, but I haven't really thumbed through it.
That's what I'm getting at. How much has changed? What are we getting into?
Well, the
I mean,
majority of what's changed.
to just get the codes, the
Yeah.
IBC, I mean, that's a lot of reading. And you'd have to be a
It's 600
building
pages.
inspector to understand some of it and what's important in there.
Well, yeah,
I
we're
mean, I've
talking about
read some of
2,000
it.
pages.
I know about codes.
Well, are
but
you saying that this is a project that we need to outsource to get it done
I
correctly?
think that the knowledge is more than what we have. The knowledge needed to make these decisions is more than what I feel comfortable that I'm capable of doing. Because once again,
So
I'm not,
you can access these codes online without purchasing them. You can access all the international codes online and look at them. And each time they come out with a new version, they give you the updates from the previous version. It would be cost prohibitive in my opinion, but I prefer as your administrator for the city to buy all these codes that you're wanting to adopt. But you can get access electronically for a lot less. You can look at them for free. You just can't download them or copy them online without paying. The other thing I would suggest is that link that I provided, granted it is the North Texas Council of Governments, but it has a lot of those things, Jerry, that you're talking about as far as comparisons and updates, and they go back several code iterations with the updates and the local amendments and why they are doing the local amendments they're doing because of things they've identified in the code. One thing about local amendments as well that I have seen cities do are the two different approaches depending on what the requirement is. If it is a requirement that you ultimately want structures to comply with, they will defer compliance for a period of years. So their local amendment might be structures that fall into X category, you not have to comply with fire suppression and for a period of 3 years from the date of adoption or something such as that. That gives businesses an opportunity to amortize that improvement or save up for that improvement before they have to make it. Another option is for let's say you like 99% of the 2015 code, but you really like a provision from the 2012 code for a particular thing, and your local amendment can say that. You can say we're adopting the 2015 code, except in areas, except in section, and list the sections where you want to apply a different code here. So there is a lot of flexibility that you can take advantage of by using your right. International codes completely anticipate the design for local amendments because, again, they're international codes and one size does not fit all. I've got to go, folks. I've got another meeting to get to, but it's a good conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Bye, Dan, thank you for the input. Jerry?
so basically, one thing I think is gonna take a lot of more than just a workshop. There's gonna be a lot of education for ourselves before we can even think about a workshop. Just like knowing what we're looking at, what we're comparing to, which specific codes and ordinances that we may want to look at changing. I don't think it's just gonna be a matter of opening up a book and reading a few pages and we're good to go with knowledge. So it'll probably take multiple workshops to be able to really reach the goal that he's wanting to achieve.
The other piece is I don't know that we really need to do it at a all sit down together workshop. I think we can do individual work or work with Jimmy, take on sections or what have you, and use some of our community intellectual resources I know a plumber, I know an electrician, you know, so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by all means, go out and find somebody you know that can help you and take on a section and bring it back to the group.
Yeah, let's start
That's
somewhere.
what we need to look at, is the experts out there. And bringing in, like, the Public Works Director or whoever that should already know this stuff.
That's not in their job description.
I would
No,
rec-
but it's another person that has more knowledge than we do. That's all I'm getting at.
We can
Yeah.
only-
Utilize our resources.
I would recommend that,
Tony's done.
oh, I thought you pointed at me.
I am pointing at
Okay.
you.
I would recommend that we do like we did when we were dealing with the compensation and stuff, that somebody do the research and come with the recommendations, and then we discuss each recommendation as it fits to us and doesn't fit to us, tweak it, and then we approve it the next time. But that's a lot of prep work up front, because this
Yeah.
isn't as easy as just a simple,
Will?
And I agree, it's not necessarily a simple thing. Something that hasn't really been touched on is, like, we're on the 97 fire codes, yes? And that was an issue that came up in the past at a Board of Adjustment thing. I challenge you in your research to find the 97 fire codes online.
yeah, exactly.
Because, and maybe our soon-to-be new city administrator, he may have that in his back pocket somewhere. And I might not be surprised. But I had to go to our county fire marshal, and it took him 3 days to pull that resource from somewhere. He wouldn't even tell me where he got it. And it's hard to expect citizens or laymen or anybody to abide by something. It's that hard to find what it says. And we don't have a copy of it at the office. And I mean, we need to do something where it's readily, easily available. It's simple for people to understand. Otherwise, how can we expect them to follow the rules? And I agree, it needs to be adapted to the city of Bandera. And it doesn't need to be oppressive or hard to understand or follow, but it needs to be available so people can look at it and read it. And I've tried to find those codes before, and it's not quite as easy as Dan says to you. You can find where you can download them for $100, but if you can't just easily find it where you can read a section of it, that's a business. And they're not in it just to provide it to everybody. They want you to pay for it. So I mean, it's not very simple. And anything we can do to make it simpler, I'm all for it.
Thank you, Will. So let's start on the 15th. In the meantime, if y'all want to coordinate through me or through Terry once he comes on board, areas of particular interest or expertise, or you can suggest resources, outreaching, whatever you want to do.
Well,
Jimmy?
luckily, doing this, I know most of the local contractors, and I could probably just handpick a couple of them that would probably have some good insight and sit down with them and get the information myself. Probably be easier for y'all.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Rebecca?
Do we really need an amusement device code?
It's in there.
A what?
Amusement device code.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah, there's several of them in there that make you go.
So we
Did you
could,
have a
we could
question?
potentially simplify this even more.
Well, those are things that we can certainly, yes.
I just wanted to say that I like that idea. That's what I'm talking about. Finding
Me too.
people that are more knowledgeable than us, so we don't have to start from scratch to educate ourselves on things that we really don't know anything about to begin with. So to bring in, per se, the experts to help educate us, I think would be a huge asset.
Well, we have our
I'm
city
pretty sure that's what I
engineer.
said,
And that's all
so,
I'm
yeah.
asking, is a starting point so we can finally get to an end result.
Bring us a starting point. We're there.
Okay, anything else on this subject, council?
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Okay. We're ready to move on. Item B is a presentation by Land Acquisition and Right-of-Way Specialist Rob Brown about the wastewater treatment plan updates. Rob?
Thank you very much.
May I
Mayor.
introduce? Rob was introduced to me by Derek Neiser. We met at his office, and that's our city engineer, for those of you who are not aware. And we began talking about our situation and our next step. And he was recommended, and there he is. Go ahead, Rob.
So now you're stuck with me for the night, so, and for not too long, how about that? I did bring my colleague with me, this is Steve Scott. We are a right-of-way company. We're called Texas Land and Right-of-Way. We specialize in easement acquisitions, water rights acquisitions, wastewater easement acquisitions, identification of lands and land acquisitions for these types of infrastructure projects. And so evidently, based on your agenda here, as it states right here, it's about you have a wastewater treatment plant plan and project possibly coming up. We can assist you in that aspect, okay? Where it takes it's similar to what you guys were just talking about there. Basically, what I got all out of that whole conversation was let him put an advisory committee together of all the professionals, that way they can discuss. Okay, so that's our wheelhouse. That's what we're the professional at, okay? So what I'd like to do, if it's okay, there's two components to this presentation. One is just a simple 3 to 5 minute presentation up on the screen explaining what is the art of the easement. Okay? And the reason we would like to share that information with you is because the majority of people do not understand what it takes, the legalities of it, the time associated to protect yourselves and your entity. And that's what we specialize in. I will give it to you if I get in a spot. So this right here is what we're going to present to you. This should take about 3 to 5 minutes, Steve. And then the next thing I wanted to hand out to you, and this is really just for your review and for your information. On top, the first few pages is our statement of qualifications. Okay? And that should answer any questions you have about our company. Behind it is a proposal, which is our professional services agreement. It is a copy of the professional services agreement. That's just for your review. What you choose to do with it is up to you, to the esteemed council. So, with that said, Mr. Scott,
Thank you, sir.
educate us.
So, Madam Mayor, distinguished council, thank you for having us this evening. I taught high school for 18 years. I preach, and so some have said that I really like the sound of my own voice. I do promise you that I will have everyone done by breakfast. So really, like Rob said though, just 3 to 5 minutes is all we need. I'm just going to give you a very simple overview of what acquisition of easements is about. And I call it the art of easements because it's kind of like a doctor practicing. It's something that is living and it changes with every situation. When you come across a new piece of property, that landowner is going to respond to you coming to take their land in different ways. And part of what we do is help them understand we aren't taking anything. And that's a very large misconception with the public as far as what easements are all about. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the nuts and bolts that are behind it. First of all, what is an easement? So by definition, a property easement is a legal situation in which the title to a specific piece of land remains with the landowner. We're not taking their land away. But another person or organization is given the right to use that land for a distinct purpose. It basically just takes an over-the-fence handshake and puts it in language so that it'll give the proper notice in the legal realm. So it's filed in the county clerk's office, and so all parties have constructive notice. It is a three-phase process that we take care of in our company. We do the title research, we also do the document preparation, and the easement acquisition. So I'll very quickly take you through each of those parts. First of all, the title research. We must research historic ownership of this property. We need to know who's entitled to execute that easement. We run into problems where rural water companies don't really understand this, and a tenant comes in requesting water, and part of the service agreement, they hand them an easement to sign. A tenant doesn't have right to sign anything pertaining to that property. And so that's part of the search that we have to do. What other easements may be in the area? If there is already an oil and gas pipeline easement there, or a wastewater pipeline easement there, you can't put a freshwater pipeline alongside of it. It's illegal to do it that way. So we have to establish what easements are already there, where those easements are located, and then we do that research in the county and district clerk's offices, where all those documents would be filed. Ownership title is done in different depths, depending on the risk that the utility is willing to take. Now, what I mean by that is you can do 30-year title. So as far as financial aspects of it, if there's a lien on the property or something like that, that'll come up in a 30-year search. But there's risk that's going to be assumed by the city or by the utility, because there's a lot of things that happened prior to 30 years ago. Those are also filed of record, and those have to be found in order to make sure that we're not stepping on somebody else's easement, that we're not infringing on somebody else's rights. So we do a 100-year title, much less risk involved there. This is a necessity for land and water rights acquisition. You have to go that far back, because a lot of times, especially in Texas, you know how minerals can get severed from the land. Well, water can get severed from the land as well. And with San Antonio and SAWS and all of that, it's becoming more and more of an issue. And that's something that has to be researched. As far as document preparation, for each parcel that has to be acquired, the county appraisal district information gets pulled, impact valuations are calculated as per state and the International Right-of-Way Association recommendations. Easements are then developed starting with a standard form and modified as necessary based on title constraints and specifics during the negotiation. An IRS Form W-9 is provided for compensation greater than $600 for Uncle Sam's purposes there. Easement acquisition. This is the part of the process that actually takes the longest. 2/3 of the time spent on a particular parcel for acquiring easements is just this, negotiating with the landowner. So after tracking down the landowner, appointments are made to begin the negotiations. We try to get the parcels donated because it's for the benefit of the public when we do these things. But if the landowner does bring up money, compensation of any type, we are legally obligated to provide a state of Texas landowner's Bill of Rights document. Compensation starts at 40% of land valuation for the area of the easement. Specific land and construction concerns are addressed during the negotiation. So if they say, I've got this tree that my grandpa planted, I want to make sure that it's saved, well, we try to work around those things when we can. And we consult with the engineers in order to make sure that things like that can happen if possible. If compensation terms are not agreed upon, then a formal offer is made to start the clock for the condemnation process, the rights of eminent domain, if there is no alternate route that's available. After successfully negotiating the easements, the documents are recorded in the county clerk's office. Like I said, that's it in a nutshell. So do you have any questions about any parts of the process or any specifics of what we do? Yes, ma'am.
we're not talking about, and you're not, I believe, we're not talking about just the easement to this property. We're talking about the acquisition of the piece of property itself.
It's
And then
everything. We
the
are-
easement's out to it. So
Yes,
it's not
ma'am.
just an easement
We
that
are
we're
a
talking about in this
one-stop shop.
contract.
The same process applies in the purchase of land. Hypothetically, the city, the engineers have identified a parcel out here. And we go through the same process. In fact, the comment I just made to Derek is because we're so meticulous in what we do, we make the title company's job easy when it comes to a fee simple transaction. Because all they have to do is ask us for the information. We share the information willingly, and we can help them with their job, okay? So, I would say we're fairly meticulous. I honestly have not seen another company in this state anyway that goes to the lengths that we do to protect our client. Okay? So.
Anything else from council?
Thank
Phase-
you.
Great,
Second
thank you very
part?
much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All right, council, I sent this agreement off to Dan as soon as I got it, and he emailed me back, wow, what's this for? I told him, and Rob happens to be a councilman over in Gonzales, so I'm sure he's enjoying the fun over here. And,
Oh, Gonzalez.
uh-huh. And Dan said, these guys do good work. Now, I don't know, that's, all I know about it, but what I do know is that by hiring this company, we take any hard feelings. If someone from here contacts a landowner and says, hey, we don't have to deal with the personal issues that often arise during land acquisition or right-of-way acquisition. Your grandfather killed my mother's cow or something. We don't have to deal with all of that. And to me, the best part of this is that their cost is rolled into the land acquisition part of the grant. So this is not a cost in addition, this is a part of, just as the engineering and the administration, well, in land acquisition, it is not only the cost of the land, but it's what it takes to get the land, to secure the land. So that being said, do you have any other questions, council?
One of my questions is just to clarify, we don't have to actually go out for bids for this. We don't
No.
have to, okay, good. I'm a fan. I'm in favor.
I'd like to make, I have a question real quick. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm kind of trying to.
Did you have questions, Tony?
I do.
Thank you.
So with us moving forward, when do we need to enter into contract to? Or, are we at a point where we know where we want them to research and look, or,
The locations have been identified by going out and.
well, I saw the presentation and stuff, but it was all theoretical. So that's what I'm asking, is that at what point can we, do we have time to read over this, and can we put it on the next agenda to approve, or do we need, is there some kind of timeline with the grant?
There is. We've got a timeline with the grant. We've got to have this thing nailed down and ready to go by July, I believe. Yes, Rebecca?
Well, you can let Derek answer your question if you like.
Yeah.
As far as, we applied for the wastewater treatment plant, we applied for the mitigation dollars, MIT, and I'm not sure the status. I know that they were supposed to have some resolution on selecting funding for those MIT grant applications in March, and we're in March, and that's something I'll need to follow up or get with Judy on to see if they've selected or what the schedule would be. So that the MIT portion, the GLO MIT has not been selected to my knowledge or announced.
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things that I'm concerned with having more dialogue around is the type, what we're gonna do with the water, to what level are we gonna treat, what technologies are we gonna use, how are we gonna avoid discharge in the river, and all of those things. So where this is going is really important as well. And so I'm a fan of moving forward with you guys, and thank you for bringing them to us. But I hope that we still intend to dialogue with the River Authority Groundwater District, get whatever TCEQ information we need to make the very best decision for Bandera and for the environment.
And what this would be is a step, we identified kind of some general areas when you said we selected, we didn't go say right here, but some general areas and the services they would provide is they could go start researching, what are the which one of these, what are the concerns, what are the problems, who are the landowners, all the different information that you would, to pursue and to try to help pin that down. I mean, there needs to be some direction made as far as identifying feasible sites or properties or locations or things of that nature to be able to pursue further once funding becomes available.
Without being very black and white on this, there's essentially 4 areas that have been identified as feasible, okay, or workable. All of them have their challenges. What takes a while, and one of the things that really is the first step is identifying who's friendly and who's not. And what I mean by that is who's going to be open to some type of negotiation. Who's going to even be open to it. You don't want to go and spin your wheels, obviously, on the person that's just going to dig in and beat you up and try to take you down this rabbit hole. You want to expedite the process as much as possible, and that has to do with talking to people, right? But once we put this out there, then it's going to be in your lap. I mean, once we start talking.
The way I was reading the contract, there's different phases to this. We have the advanced phase and we have the initial phase. So, this would not necessarily be nailing us to one piece of property, but first off, you give them the authority to go out there and represent the city. And then we go, okay, well, we're not going to exceed this, we're not going to do that, this other thing. This comes later, after we find out what is out there, what is available, where we can go, then we move on to.
Your preliminary.
Yeah, we've got the preliminary. If we this is all blank back here. This came from Dan, so if we just fill this thing in and engage them tonight for the preliminary groundwork, come back to us, because we don't know what acquisition is going to be. We don't know.
That's right.
The bottom line on the plan is going to depend on where we put the thing. So council, I urge you, please, let us get started, because we're going to keep dragging this thing out and we're going to miss the boat. Did you want to say something, Jim?
Yeah, as we've probably discussed a few times, the land itself is only part of the consideration in the acquisition. When you're looking at a particular parcel of land, I don't want to make assumptions. Are you looking at the cost to be able to provide the services to and from that location too?
Yes.
In the per se cost of that acquisition?
Yes, sir. If you remember, we kind of put together those, and there was a different cost associated with each one of the geographic regions. And the difference in the cost is the conveyance to get it to that location. So that is part of the equation too. So the overall cost of construction will be very much dependent on which location we wind up moving forward with as far as the final site.
And correct me if I'm mistaken, but the type of technology that we agree upon,
This is the one
that would dictate at least somewhat of where you would be looking. Is that correct?
And it's in.
I think we could make whatever technology, whatever we could probably, I don't think that's so much dependent on which location we use. Unless.
The water's going to a specific
that's-
use.
Yeah,
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting.
There may be some sites that may be better if you want to have reuse and you have a partner that you could maybe use reuse for, i.e. golf course. that might, lend that site to be more suited for that, depending on how you want to reuse and and what kind of, negotiated arrangement that the city could make. So, I mean, some of those things could come into play, but as far as any of the technologies for treatment and water quality, all the sites would work, all the locations would work.
But if you're looking to acquire a piece of land that's close to the water or basically on the water, then that could have a big influence on how much you're going to end up paying.
For the property, you're saying?
Correct.
And
And then the type of water treatment plant that we would decide upon.
Yes.
It seems to me we need to get that first, and I'm not the expert, but it seems to me that we need to get an agreement on what type of technology we're gonna be looking at first, because there's, 3 or 4 different types of technology,
Yeah.
depending on what
Well, like I said, the sites, locations don't really matter. I think you can do any type of treatment process that you want for any of the sites. I think they would all work and be interchangeable. So selecting one process over another process is not gonna rule out any sites.
Well, it seems to me it would, because if you need to be on the water based on the type of plant that you decide upon, that's gonna have a lot to do with the cost of that land, especially around here. If you're looking at for example, a piece that's fronting on the Medina River, that's gonna cost you probably quite a bit more than a piece that's just.
Yeah, and we wanna be as close to, most of the sites we picked were as close to the Medina as we could get without being in the floodplain. So that's like another consideration you have to take.
All right, but hang on just a minute, Rebecca. We're not here to discuss what kind of plant we're gonna get. Derek has told us over and over again, once we pick out where it wants to be, he can put it there and we can do the ASR, which I think we're all in favor of, rather than discharge directly into the river. The difference is gonna be the conveyance from this side of the river to that side of the river. That's gonna be the difference with the different locations in the price of the plant, not the price of the real estate. Tony?
I just want to be sure I'm clear on the deliverable of a contract. So I understand all that you do and all that you research, and obviously y'all work very well together. So what I'm thinking is you will be feeding this information that you're finding out to Derek and his team, and then y'all will be giving us the comparison that says that site A, based on the research that we've given, will cost this, and it'll have these processes, and then we will have all that laid out. But they're gonna be they're not gonna give anything deliverable directly to us, because we're not gonna know what to do with it. Derek's the one that's gonna need that information, and then whenever we pick a site, then they step back up, is that right? Then y'all step back up and make sure all of the information is
Exactly.
gathered and negotiated with that landowner, about the trees and the, grandpa's barn and all those things. And then they give all that information to the title, but.
So Texas Land and Right of Way, if you require us to feed you that information, and that's what you want, that's what we will do. However, you're gonna get us working very closely with the engineers. Is very, very important to make this thing run seamlessly and make these transitions seamless.
That was the point I was making, is that y'all can give us all the information you want, and it doesn't matter to us.
Yeah.
It's combination with his information, structures that we can make an educated decision is the part that matters the most to us as a deliverable.
Absolutely.
And then y'all will work to negotiate that once we pick a piece of land.
Exactly.
And we're always available, as far as our team is. If you have something specific to our team, pick up the phone. I'm great with that.
I understand that part, but I'm just saying that, y'all do a lot of things that.
I need to sign that
need to
one.
happen,
Okay.
but
Do that. This one has
basically-
The short answer to your question was yes, we have a contract with the city, we would be in close coordination with them both ways, from us to them and then to us. And then really, we kind of laid out some feasibility based on a quick, kind of engineering look. They would be doing the research to find out what are the pluses, minuses, pros and cons, things to consider, additional things, opportunities, or maybe pitfalls for these locations, so that the council can make
That's
an
all gonna
informed
be
decision.
in conjunction with yours,
Yes,
all
of
laid out
course,
in
of-
one thing for us.
Of course, of course.
That's
Thank you.
I don't want two different reports, because then they're gonna mean nothing to me.
Rebecca? Rebecca?
Yes, this professional services agreement is not limited to this one project, is that correct? Okay.
So if you'll notice at the very end of it, there is a work authorization form, which that's where we can spell out deliverables, the work that's going to be performed, and we can do it project by project, or even phase by phase. And the only way we change that is, behind that is a change order form. Okay?
Right.
So we were,
I'll make to make it.
however we can facilitate and make it simple for you, that's our goal. Okay?
It's my goal too.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say that, the right-of-way acquisition can be the critical path for a project like this, from beginning to end. So starting the process as early as we can, probably maybe even a little bit late, maybe, if, with the MIT funding, when it becomes, not late, but, we don't want to
got some
wait and
catch-up
push it
to do.
off in the order. It's something that's going to have to eventually happen, and the process needs to be done as soon as possible.
Thank you, Derek. Rebecca?
May I make a motion?
Yes, you may.
I'd like to move to approve the professional services agreement for right-of-way services between the city of Bandera and Texas Land and Right-of-Way Company LLC.
Jerry?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jerry. Further discussion, council? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Thank you, guys. We'll be in touch tomorrow, next week. Tomorrow's Friday. Get back with y'all next week and see where we go from there.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
They're going to help us know what we don't know.
Excuse me just 1 minute. Rob, you
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
take this over to Jill to fill all this stuff out, and then I'll sign it for you and get it over to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay. Item D, presentation by Derek Neiser of LNV on flood infrastructure fund updates.
All right,
What you got?
thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. This kind of want to back up a little bit, this kind of history. Last year, the city submitted an abbreviated application to the Texas Water Development Board under their Flood Infrastructure Fund, FIF, you might hear it referred to as. That was then approved, and the city was invited to submit the full application for funding under the FIF program. It was selected as a project to be funded and approved by the Texas Water Development Board, and the original amount that we submitted, if you, on your handout, you should have 3 exhibits and then a kind of like a budget summary. I'm going to be talking to the budget summary right now. So if you notice, there's 2 columns there, and this is basically the menu of budget items that we have to submit to the Water Development Board as part of any project, similar to what we did with the drinking water fund stuff that we did. And as you can see, the first column is the original project, the way it was, abbreviated application and final, the long form application that was approved. And at the bottom in the green, there's a total of I'm just going to round it off, $8.2 million for the total project cost. Of that, about 6.9, just under 7 million was construction. The rest of it was all engineering, financing, your grant administrator, additional services, all the different things that are required to get the job completed, and the paperwork, the loan, and everything processed for that. Pretty typical and pretty similar to what we did on our Water Development Board Water System Improvements project that we're getting ready to bid out here pretty quick for y'all. The second column, so then I'll go through all what the changes are, but the way it was originally put together, we presented that to council. Y'all seen that, I guess, the ones that some of y'all may not have, and apologize for not including an exhibit of the original, but I'll go over that in a minute. We were asked to take a look at, okay, let's scale this back, okay? Let's put together an option that's still viable. In other words, there's certain requirements for the FIF money. 45% of it is free money, and the other 55% is a 0 interest loan. So there's certain requirements for this fifth program that you have to meet, and we need to stay within the general confines of what we originally submitted, and it is subject to be reviewed and then ultimately approved if the council does decide to scale it back to a thing here. So, and some of those things are the benefit cost ratio and the percent, there's a requirement for it has to have a certain percent of green infrastructure. So there's a bunch of different things. I'm gonna go into details on that other than to say that the alternative we put together here does meet those general requirements, and all those different things that were in the original requirements for the fifth dollars. And as you can see, the reduced scope, I call it a reduced scope alternative. The dollars moves it down from 8.2 to 5.4 for this option that we presented, and I'll be kind of showing to you or presenting to y'all in a little bit more detail. If you go to the 3-page exhibit that I put together, I'll kind of speak to the first one, which is kind of like an overall map. It says the City of Bandera TWDB 5th project, and it kind of shows everything in one page there. We basically took the drainage improvements along the creekway that starts at Maple Street by the RV park and goes up and crosses 16 and then Cedar and goes under Main Street and then winds up going just right here behind, well, not here, we're not at City Council, behind City Hall into Pecan Street and into Cherry. So what we did was we reduced that one from, the original amount was $3 million and we reduced it to $2.2 million. What we did to reduce that was when you're looking at a drainage project, you're trying to reduce the water surface elevation. So the first thing we did was remove an upstream segment, because that makes sense. You want to start downstream and work up. So if you're going to take off a chunk of scope, let's look at the upstream. We removed the section from Pecan to Cherry, which was through that channel section that goes through those backyards there on the way to, is it Dollar General?
It's from
Right there,
behind the
Cherry Street.
Pico at Cherry Street
Yeah.
too.
So we pulled that off, and then we also eliminated the channel portions because that was the least bang for the buck, water surface wise. The channel sections between Main Street and Cedar, and then Cedar and Maple Street. And I apologize, I'm looking at the exhibit here, and I see we have Cedar labeled in the wrong spot. My apology, it should be that little red dot there on Cedar Street. But so we eliminated the channel work, but we left the low water crossing at Maple, improving that, added capacity, and then we also improved the Cedar Street crossing, improving that crossing there, putting in adequate sized culverts, or it'd be sort of like a bridge class culvert, it'd be pretty big. I think we have like a 3-barrel box going in there, is what we propose in our preliminary. And then we would continue with the work from Main Street back to Pecan. So that's, any questions on that segment, or is what we pulled out of there?
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you. At the Cedar Street improvement, is that going to include some road improvement
Yes,
and pedestrian access as well? At that, we did discuss that.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a narrow
Right.
pass and you get a lot of foot traffic
Yeah.
through there. And this was kind of one of the pieces that helped me to kind of justify or hope to justify the cost a little bit more to council, because some of these things could potentially be coming off of the street improvement plan project. So I'm just hoping that we can get that designed really well.
What we did in our
for safety.
preliminary budgeting process, and when we did put these numbers all together, we extended and put a culvert, and it's a bridge class culvert, but I'm calling it culvert because I think both locations we have box culverts that are multi-barrel, but they're long enough to be called a bridge, so I don't want to confuse anybody. It's not a span bridge. But we're going to be putting those in, and we're going to widen them out with a head wall that's wide enough to be able to provide, if you ever went to a curb and gutter section there with sidewalks, that would fit across there.
Okay.
We didn't actually put the road for 100-foot of road or whatever, or 50-foot of road, widen it out with all that, but it's wide enough to accommodate that.
Okay.
And so we basically put the road back pretty much the same way it is now, but we'd be raising it and reprofiling it to go through there to improve, right now it's like it's cedar, it's a pretty good dip. So we would be reprofiling the road, redoing the road, putting in a new box for future. We didn't include sidewalks. That's something we could maybe look at because we do have contingency dollars in these. So when we get in design, if that's something we wanted to add, sidewalks or something somewhere, we could, but
Okay.
it's going to be a short section. Yes, sir. No.
Derek, have you had any contact with TxDOT about putting the bigger culverts at 16 and the ditch?
We have not yet, but that would be something we definitely need to do. And I was kind of waiting till, if this thing gets funded and we're moving forward and the city's committing dollars.
Yeah.
Because, you go to TxDOT and they'll put it on a list and who knows when it'll be. But if we can show that there's dollars committed, the city's serious about doing improvements in this section, and we'll have the drainage study to show that here is one of the biggest, pinch points in the whole section is your
Good.
culvert under 16. So yeah, definitely in the plans, but we haven't done it yet.
Great.
Thank you. Any other questions, council?
Okay, so that's
Where are you talking? Where are you talking on that?
16.
60.
We're at on 16.
Where the ditch goes under 16?
Are you talking down
By the
on
vape
the
shop.
south end of town?
By the vape shop.
Yeah,
Okay, oh, okay.
under the vape
Right
shop,
there
over
where
there,
it
yeah.
crosses between, right before you get to 13th Street, so you turn off of Main Street onto 16 going to Pipe Creek, and right before you get that big crossing right
Right
there.
before you get
They
to-
just cleared it out on the upstream side, the owners did, and took out all the brush.
I got you.
So that's what we proposed there. So once again, that went from 3 to 2 point, and when I'm talking numbers here, I'm talking total budget, it's construction and all the other costs associated with the project. Then on Maple Street is the biggest, and when I say Maple Street, I'm talking about over here by the park. So in the middle of that page, there's a white, block there that says Maple Street Road Drainage Improvements, estimated 1.1 million. We reduced that one the most significant amount because it was originally 2.53 million. And we lowered it down to 1.1. And if you would go to the second page of your exhibit, it shows kind of the limits of that. It basically goes from 8th to Main Street. And so it's, it's going to be connected to 8th Street, 9th, 10th, 11th, and then Main. And it has a typical section there. What we did was we narrowed the pavement. We pulled the sidewalk out on the left side, which is the side opposite of the park for this drawing. So we left sidewalk on the park side with a curb. We would provide drainage over land the way it is now with like a curb cut with a drain where it goes through the sidewalk. And no curb on the left side or the side opposite the park. But we would put a little ribbon curb just to protect the pavement, keep it from breaking up. So reduced the width, eliminated some sidewalk, and then the big ticket item was we reduced the underground, we eliminated the underground storm sewer. We did have storm sewer collecting all the drainage and then taking it down to the river below the dam in the original preliminary drawings. We eliminated that, so that was where the biggest chunk came from. That was quite expensive, so we don't have any inlets, any underground pipe. So the concept would be just like it is now. The roadway would be elevated towards the park or sloped towards the park. Any of the flow that comes on would still go across the pavement. It would gather in the curb on the park side, and we would have a profile, where it's high in the middle and low to provide positive drainage. And then we would have curb cuts, I'm calling it, basically like a sidewalk drain, where what we'd probably wind up doing is you're walking down the sidewalk, and I'm sure you've seen them. The curb will just be cut like an inlet for about 10 or 15 feet. You'll have a metal plate, galvanized metal plate over the top. So that would just drain and through the existing drainage paths in the park. And I'll get to those in a minute. So that's the most significant cut. And it's basically reduced the scope. The width came out, the sidewalks came out, storm sewer. The other third part of this is the park. basically from Main Street all the way down to First Street. And the cost there went from 2.58 million to 2.1 million. And what we did there, we left, if you go to the third page of the little drawing set that I gave you, we have a sketch of just the park. The dollars we cut out of it, we left all the repair areas the way they were originally for the whole stretch. We left the bioswales to reduce erosion, to try to handle where the water drains down at 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th Street and goes to the river. But what we did do was we reduced some of the paving area. We reduced the river access points, some of the amenities along there. We reduced the trail significantly. We cut out the middle third. And we also eliminated the nature trail that went through the river section down over there around First. So those are the items that we pulled out. So it's still pretty much the same kind of a project with less amenities to knock that price down. So that's where we're at. And if there's any questions regarding those, the original applied $8.2 million project scope or the revised or reduced scope alternative, I'd be glad to answer the questions. And then also the process for the, well, I'll wait until.
Okay, any questions about the change in the project?
Yeah, I was bringing it up online because it's cut off on our paper copy. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, and I like that you guys did, if you notice, it's cut off from the paper copy, but it's in the email that was sent.
Here, I've got 11 by 17.
If you want to just give that to them, because I'm good.
Which one are you looking at? I'll share.
This is the park project. If you look all the way towards the right,
Oh, I see what we're missing.
where they've changed from the original design, they had actually done a big parking lot on the lower level. But the way it is now, they've changed it to include like a circle drive, like a drop-off point. So whether that's for the elderly or whether that's for, your kayaks and canoes there near the ramp. But then it's just like a drop-off point. It's not for cars to be allowed to park.
Correct, it'd be just like a circle drive,
Yeah.
that access there for people.
I think it's just fantastic. And then also it making improvements to the parking lot up above by those restrooms. And then with this is a switchback, so handicap accessible sidewalk getting down to the river. So beautifully done. Thank you. I think, anyway.
If there are no questions about the project itself, let's talk about the cost, the pro forma, and the coverage ratio, which has definitely changed. Do you have questions about the project, Jerry?
Not right now.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
thank you. These came from Ben Rosenberg, and quite simply, let me see if I've got the pro forma. Quite simply, we have gone from a minus 3.5 coverage ratio to a +1 and above, which means simply that if you're in a plus coverage ratio, no increase in taxes, no increase in utilities, no increases in anything else. This dropped the cost of the project by about $60,000 a year, and we were short, I think 46 or so, 36 or so on the, it was a 3.4, I believe, was the coverage ratio. But anyway, this is affordable without any new utility increases, any new drainage fees, any of that sort of thing. So if it is funded at the same ratio that the original application was funded at, 45-55. So it's affordable. And I think it's still necessary.
So at this point, Mayor, do you need a motion to move forward with the revised project plan?
I think
Or
that,
are we good?
I think
where we're
that
at?
for the sake of tonight's meeting, we've already agreed on an administrator, we've got him. We got an engineer, we got people to cover, it's just a matter of which plan do we want to go with. We did not actually, all we did was authorize the submission of the original application. So we don't have to, we've already submitted, so I believe right now with
There's
council's
nothing to do.
consensus is to move forward with the reduced project. And if I'm incorrect in that, please give me some sort of comment. Yes, Tony?
So it's $60,000 a year for the 0% loan, right? That's what you were
That's
calculating, the
correct.
lower
There's
amount?
no interest.
And since it's park improvements, is that something that's something that EDC can contribute to, right?
Well, it's a combination of park improvements and the drainage project, so,
I meant contribute part of it, since part of it is park, not, that's definitely a more manageable amount
yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
to deal with.
it is.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay, so where I was going earlier, so the process would be, we definitely, we need to move if the council's directing us to submit to the Water Development Board the reduced scope, we'll need to put that together and get it to them quick. We already kind of have it all, already presented it to you, but in their application format.
In their format.
And then coordinate, and of course, like I said, it is subject to their review and approval, but from talking to Mr. Moriarty, it doesn't seem like, as long as we stay within the confines and the requirements, reduced dollars shouldn't be an issue. So we'll proceed with that as quickly as possible.
That's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I would prefer to just go ahead and make a motion if you don't mind.
Let's do it that way if it makes you feel better.
And that way you have clear direction from the council as to decision or not, I don't know.
No, go ahead.
So
Make
my
it-
motion would be then to request that our city engineer and our grant writer move forward with this revised lower cost project for the flood infrastructure
That's
fund.
submitted here, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony, you second? Further discussion?
Thank you, Derek.
All in favor? All in favor.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Derek. Thanks for coming out.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you working with me to get that done.
No problem.
Item E is an update from Simple City about the Design Rodeo update, an update about the update.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
we need about 5 minutes to move the computer over there so that y'all can see what he's talking about.
Okay, then here at
So, just 5 minutes.
7:31, we'll recess the meeting. It's 7:40, I'm reconvening this regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Bandera. Item E is an update from Simple City about Design Rodeo update. Matt, are you there?
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started then.
You can comment to him that we can
Thank you
hear
all for
him.
your time, Mayor, City Council, new City Administrator Byrd. Tonight, we're going to recap what we've heard and then talk about what we're working on currently, and then we'll move on to next steps.
Cool.
Over the last few weeks, we've learned quite a bit of information about Bandera, and we're in the process of gathering all of this information and compiling it into knowledge, and then we're going to go back and vet the knowledge that we're learning through the community, through an additional series of conversations. But for the people that have been participating in this journey, we want to thank you all and encourage you all to continue on in this journey. It's extremely important. We're working on the comprehensive master plan for the city of Bandera, and we're going to code the master plan to create your land development standards or your development regulations that govern how your built environment gets built, how buildings work, your land uses, all of those types of elements will be part of this project as well. So please stay involved if you have been involved. And for those that have not been involved, we're going to do a brief summary of the takeaways from the design rodeo that we've recently facilitated and bring you up to speed with us so that you can join along at the right pace. So tonight we're doing the design rodeo wrap-up. It's going to introduce the information we've learned and where we are going based on some of the key takeaways that we've seen. You all have heard this many times, the people that have been involved, and so we're going to run through this rather quickly, but it's important to be stated so that we have a foundation that we're all building our information and knowledge upon as we progress through this journey here. Bandera is a series of beautiful 335-foot blocks by 335-foot blocks tucked into the peninsula of the Medina River. It has beautiful characteristics with its natural environment, its built environment, and it has an authenticity that is hard to overlook. Each one of these 335-foot blocks is made up of a variety of lot patterns. As you'll notice by the existing building footprints and lot makeup, not many lots and blocks are the same throughout the community. Different areas vary where you may see more similarities and more differences depending by the context of the actual location in town. And so we're using this information to guide the decision-making going forward. We need to understand the authenticity that was created and how Bandera came to be in order to guide its path going forward. We think it's very important and that the information in this downtown, we call it the DNA, is critical to advising and advancing the conversation as we start writing standards going forward. Bandera incrementally grew block by block and lot by lot, incrementally up, incrementally out. As the population increases, as services and needs came to town, as civic facilities and institutions started to come to town, it incrementally grew in this manner, and we think it's an appropriate scale and pace for it to grow into the future. This is the plans room in San Antonio, Texas. There are 7 rooms like this. These are floor-to-ceiling plan sets. Each one of these tags you see in front of you is someone's idea, someone's plan. And oftentimes it met the minimum standards of the development codes that they had on the books. And oftentimes what we saw is that the outcomes left much to be desired. It left communities fiscally fragile. It created communities that were unidentifiable or placeless. It ruined the characteristics. Furthermore, all of the time and energy and money and resources that went into validating those plans didn't actually bring to life the goals or the aspirations the community to aspire to become. As I was taking this photo, I was risking my life, and nature, these clouds started shaping in the form of an F. That tail of the cloud whipped down, and nature was telling us that we're failing. And furthermore, what we're requiring in our development standards create these types of outcomes. What we noticed is oftentimes communities have development standards that create patterns like this. This is a 25-foot setback and 10-foot side yards and 15 to 35-foot rear yards. What we noticed is your development standards for residential development actually require this pattern of development. We don't believe that it's authentic to Bandera. It's not emulating those patterns. And furthermore, we think that this would be detrimental to your character. While Bandera doesn't have 1,000-year-old cathedral plazas like they do in Europe, we have amazing characteristics to build off of. 11th Street, for example. We can get the information of this building and we can extract the details, how wide the lots are, how tall it is, how much glass is at the ground level, how far the awning goes out over the sidewalk, what are the materials of the hitching post, right? And these kind of standards we have right into your development codes to create patterns that would emulate the patterns that you have in today's standards. Furthermore, those incremental scale buildings and those building patterns are low cost, lower barrier to entry for entrepreneurs, and it doesn't leave your community in a fragile state. In the United States, there's been 46 communities that have filed bankruptcy. We all know about the city of Detroit at $18.5 billion of infrastructure. Any house outside of the 7th mile had its electricity turned off, had its water lines turned off, and you had to relocate in the United States. And this is just a few years ago. We've got Boise County coming in at $5 million worth of bankruptcy, Stockton at $26 million. And I say all of this to say that the decisions that we make every other Thursday night are very important. You all had extremely important items on your agenda today. You all are doing your best due diligence for your community going forward, and we have to make informed decisions as we advance these efforts. You all are prone to small area flooding, and we're in flash flood alley. We need to make sure that our infrastructure is designed to facilitate this, that we don't overwhelm it as we're increasing capacity and adding population. This project will be facilitated within the extraterritorial jurisdiction, better known as the ETJ. and the city limits. The comprehensive master plan can encompass both of these areas. So the area right outside the city limits into the county, which is about a half a mile according to what rules your community is governed by, allows us to do future planning into these areas, and we'll be taking that into account. Furthermore, we would really like to analyze how the interface between these areas enter into town, and we think it's extremely important. We've been analyzing your community from several perspectives. We're building a geographic information system for your community so that you actually have these maps to build upon as your community grows. You'll notice we've what's called digitized your building footprints. We've got your lot and block standards integrated, as well as your floodplain. So as we go forward, we can really analyze the decisions we make and understand the impacts that they have upstream, downstream, and to your adjacent neighbors. As we were analyzing Bandera, we are establishing 6 different character areas. And what we are using in these character areas to do is write your development regulations off of, as well as inform the comprehensive master plan. So first we start in nature. It's where humans go in nature and they go out of nature. It's, go stare into a fire, go for a walk, sharpen your claws, that kind of thing. Reconnect back into your natural setting. Bandera is wrapped in beautiful nature, and it's integrated into town as well. Nature is in close proximity to y'all's setting, your residence, which is really special, and oftentimes people don't fully understand what that means. You have rural areas. Rural is when citizens or humans first get introduced into sparsely settled landscapes, if you will. So farms, dude ranches, food production, those are the rural areas, and again, Bandera is wrapped in those areas. You have neighborhood residential. It's generally residential, detached homes, and you'll start to see more uniformity in your lot patterns and your lot dimensions. Some lots are larger, some are smaller, but they have a variety of patterns, but generally residential in nature. Next, you have neighborhood mix. This is where you've got residential with house form retail. You may have a little trinket shop or antique store, but it's in a house form. And you may have commercial corners, or it may be a commercial street that's one block away from a residential street. There's this integration that starts happening from residential and retail, but it's really small scale. And so we want to really extract those details and code those forward. So that's going to be an important element. Then you have urban core, which is your downtown area, which is the area that basically is buildings brought to the street edge. It's a continuous row of buildings. The sidewalks are more formal. Parking's generally in the rear. You don't have a bunch of curb cuts in your sidewalks, and so you get this continuous walkable environment, and it's functioning in your downtown. It's really part of the core area of your community. You also have highway commercial, which is State Highway 16 coming in, 173. The buildings are set back very far. They've got large parking lots in front, and generally it may be where your feed stores are located, your larger boxes, those types of patterns. So we need to extract that and understand how it looks and feels and functions going into the future. That was a quick snapshot of what we learned, the patterns, and we've got a lot more going on with that. We also have a social pinpoint site that is up and running where these ideas that you all have fed into the conversation are being captured, and there's conversations going on amongst the community members on those patterns. So please log in and, I'm sorry. I've got a link on the second page. So what we're going to do now is jump into the Design Rodeo key takeaways. And with me tonight is Linda Humble with Simple City, and she's going to help us summarize these in a quick manner so that we can start to understand how to advance this going forward. So, thank you. Oops.
Hold on, we can't hear you, Linda. She's muted.
Linda, you're muted.
Thank you. I muted it because I live 2 blocks from the Union Pacific Railroad track, and there was a train going by. I didn't want y'all to think y'all had moved Bandera. So the items that we heard regarding transportation and infrastructure, there was a lot of conversation about water and wastewater. We also heard that there were some concerns about expanding electricity. So one of the things we'll be doing when we come back is to follow up with Bandera Electric Co-op. We also heard quite a bit relative to and the infrastructure and the transportation issues really kind of focused on Main Street. We heard that there needed to be incentives considered so that the design elements that protect Bandera's look are made available. We heard to keep the chain stores out of Bandera. We also heard that the old codes protect the uniqueness and the new codes protect life safety. And y'all are addressing that issue again at your April 15th meeting. Next slide, Matt. Regarding housing, we heard there was a need for workforce housing, an efficiency element so that the workforce could afford to live in Bandera. We heard several people express concerns over the rent. We heard a need for millennial housing. So our group will be meeting with millennials and what it will take for them to invest and be a part of Bandera and stay. We also heard conversations about how do we make the extraterritorial jurisdiction attractive for housing developments. And then we had another conversation about water, wastewater, and electricity. We also heard about the need to protect the natural environment that makes Bandera special when building housing. It needed to maintain the characteristics of Bandera. And it needed to also ensure that neighbors could still be neighbors, that we didn't have subdivided neighborhoods, but rather real traditional neighborhoods. Next slide. In tourism and economy, there was real consensus about attracting artisans and craftsmen, people that would cause you to come to Bandera and be fitted and then come back and pick it up. Whether it's cowboy hats, cowboy boots, whatever the case may be, things that really make the tourist experience unique, so that when you come to Bandera, you truly have had a Bandera experience. We also talked about the natural surroundings, or what make Bandera unique, very authentic. And that's part of what has to be incorporated in the various elements as we move forward with the plan. When we talked about tourism and the economy, we also heard from people that the last comp plan died because of a lack of involvement from key players, whoever they are. So we are coming back in 2 weeks and scheduling appointments. Matt's going to be talking about getting names of people that you would like to ensure have a seat at the table. We took this very seriously and want to make sure that everybody in Bandera has an opportunity to be involved, because it is very, very important. Next. Historical preservation and authenticity. We talked about the fact that the historical preservation ordinance, as well as the Western Trail Heritage District, is voluntary. We talked about as Bandera grows and expands, is it important to make that preservation mandatory? And that was about a 50-50 split, and that depends on where it is, how much it costs, and what it looks like. So that's an area that we will be spending some time in our next code vetting with the community. What exactly does that look like? The way it was described was cost versus benefit is important. The cost of preserving it has to create some benefit to the community.
Thank you, Linda. We also showed this a little bit earlier. Again, we have a online presence for this project. We're doing both live meetings with everyone, and then we're doing online interactions as well. The link there, it was very hard to get, so I added it right on. It's bit.ly, bit.ly/Bandera building block, and that's it. And that will take you to the website where you can provide feedback and follow along as the community conversations. Start dialogue with your neighbors about what we need, what's missing in Bandera, what are we aspiring to accomplish, what do we want our community to look, feel, and function like going forward. So we really do need input as we go forward, and it's extremely important, as Linda stated. As we continue on this journey, we're coming to town on April 29th and 30th. We're going to be meeting with Generation Z. During the design rodeo, we continued to refer to them as millennials, and afterwards we got corrected that millennials are the previous generation, that the new workforce housing generation is Generation Z, and they have different standards than millennials. So Keely, one of y'all's wonderful staff members, is going to be helping us facilitate these conversations. We've got conversations with civic institutions, utility companies, and more. So we will be coming to town for that. Also, April the 7th is the Code Rodeo. We're going to be bringing back to you all values. We're working on establishing some of the values that we're hearing and turning those into intent statements. So we'll have those ready for you to review, add, take away, and edit as we go through how to establish the regulatory framework to set these standards up in the comp plan as well as the development standards. We will also be addressing all of the other comprehensive master plan standards, so your transportation network, your housing, and all of the elements that Linda just went over. Then we can turn those into policy statements. And once we get them into policy statements, we really start vetting with the community and the policymakers about how the application of the data we have gets applied. We think that it's extremely important that everyone be involved in that, and we've stated that many times. We have been really excited to be on this journey with you all. We understand the importance of this journey as well as we've jumped into this. Linda has been a city manager for 30 years. I know she doesn't look a day over 30, but her expertise that she brings to this community is invaluable and timeless. I've been a development services director for the fastest growing communities in the country from 2004 to 2015, and my entire life is dedicated to help communities put together fiscally sustainable results and maintain their authenticity. Bandera has the potential to do this, and we're excited about the next few steps of this journey. We're still in the comprehensive master plan phase, so we're early into this, and we, again, need to build this foundation up with as much insight as we possibly can to inform the decisions going forward. Thank you very much for all of this, Town Council. We are excited to be on this journey with you, and we're here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Matt, you said April, and we're going to be back in town on March 29th and March 30th.
Oh, okay.
March 29th and 30th, April 7th for the rodeo. Thank you for that correction.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear us?
I guess not.
I don't know if they can hear us though.
No, we can hear you. Let me text Matt. So what do you want me to tell him? Like, thank you? Bye.
Yeah, I mean, bye,
I
Matt.
don't know if there's anything else we can do.
Mayor Pro Tem just confirmed they can hear us, but we cannot hear them. And I think that's probably true for everyone on Zoom. I'm not quite sure.
Should I ask him
Can
to
you hear
give
us
us?
now?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Good, because I have a question.
Now, I wonder if that means that, I wonder if the audience on Zoom was able to hear Matt and Linda. I'm really not sure who can hear who. But Matt, you can hear us now?
Yes, ma'am. And Jordan
Okay.
also confirmed that she could hear us.
Oh, good. Thank
Believe
you.
everyone on Zoom could hear. Thanks.
Okay.
Tony, you had a question?
Yes, when Linda, you mentioned that there was discussion regarding the need to expand electricity. What was that in relation to?
There were several properties where there seemed to be some capacity challenges with existing electricity.
Okay, my apologies.
And so I've already reached out to Bandera Electric Co-op, and we're going to be meeting with the executive manager to understand the limitations and what that looks like. So we know how to address that in the plan.
Excellent. Yeah,
Thank you.
because I was thinking that was more in relation to the discussion along how do we annex people that want to be annexed and what's that process, and the discussion in that had to do with utilities. And so, but you're right, the expanding of electricity had more to do with the constraints of the buildings, the commercial buildings and places that couldn't put their more electricity poles. Got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments from council? Well, Councilman Hasty wanted me to tell y'all, thank you so much. She apologizes for not being here tonight, but she just wants to see us move forward and see where we go from here. And she'll be back with us next week. All righty, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Look
Thanks,
forward to
everyone.
seeing you
Appreciate it.
guys later this month.
Yes, ma'am. Thank y'all.
Thanks.
Okay, item F, the salary and posting of the position of the Public Works Director. Terry, I can't decide whether to call him, Mr. Byrd, T-Bird, Terry. We've had conversations with the Public Works Director, and we have an interim plan that we're going to put into place. He'll be back next week for us to finalize some of this too. It doesn't involve council's approval or anything. We're just going to sort of reassign, this is Martin's suggestion, by the way, reassign responsibilities within the department for now until we get a a Public Works Director. So we're working on that for the interim. In the meantime, I think it would be wise if we took a look at the job description of the Public Works Director and decided if this is given where we are now, what we're doing now, because this job description doesn't always fit 100% of what's going on. Yes, Tony?
This was one of the things that we actually said we were going to do when we had our city administrator. We were looking at an employee model, match the job descriptions to the duties themselves, talk about supplemental duties that don't fall within that description, and then match the salaries accordingly. So that, to me, that falls all in line with what we had already decided.
And we've already started, actually Terry has already started on that project. He went right to it and he totally agrees, if I may speak for you. Would you like to comment?
May I ask first, what would you like for us to call you? Is that on? Okay. It's on now.
John Terry Byrd is my name, so I answer to any of it, but family calls me Terry, and everybody else has called me T-Bird because it's Terry Byrd. So, I'm good any which way you guys want to go.
I like T-Bird, so that's what I'm going to say. Okay.
Yeah. I grew up with that. That'll work.
Thanks.
Did your father do that on purpose? Or your parents name you that? Just, did he like T-birds or something?
No, that actually, the middle name came from another family member, and there's a long John story, and I'm not going to bother you with it. I'll wait until it's
Okay.
But it is a family name, goes back to our roots back in Texas.
The point was, council, if you would consider, because as I said, he's already jumped into this. He'll be back for a couple of days next week. He's actually going to start on the 5th of April. Let us roll with this the way that we're going right now before we obligate ourselves tonight to a salary and a job description and anything else. I think it's something that can be very manageable for now, and it may change the scope of things as we go down the road in this employee model. So with that being said, would you consider postponing this particular agenda item? Yes, Tony?
I'm not sure we really, if we're already going to discuss it from a bigger picture, but I can make an official motion.
Would you do that, please, to postpone it or whatever you want to do?
I'd like to make a motion to postpone item F.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Just
All in favor?
comments. A comment.
Yes, of course.
People are gonna think I'm crazy, but I think it's a good time to evaluate the need for that position. I'm not saying that there's not a need for it, but I think it would be a nice project for T-Bird to take on. The real need there for it versus some of our knowledgeable and capable employees that we already have, making them whatever you want to call it, foreman, supervisor, whatever it may be, and handle the administrative management duties through.
I think we're out of scope right now for the
Oh, are
agenda
we?
item. I think
Okay.
so. I think so. Because that
But
falls,
just food for thought.
that falls in the employee.
Well, yeah,
model.
the motion on the table is to the motion we have before us is to table this particular item.
Okay.
So unless there's some discussion about the tabling itself, thank you, Tony, for reminding me. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay, item G, confirm the appointment of John T. Byrd as city administrator with an annual salary of $65,000 per year, starting April 1, 2021. This was posted before I had a chance to talk to Terry about coming to Bandera, and the fact that that is Easter weekend, and coming on the 1st would be kind of ridiculous since the 2nd is a holiday. And his official start date will be Monday, the 5th.
Okay. Would you like a motion?
We need to confirm it, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I move to confirm the appointment of T. Byrd as city administrator with an annual salary of $65,000 per year, starting April 5, 2021.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Christine seconds. Further discussion?
Thank you. Welcome.
We'll all be good. And just so you know, council, since we've had a motion and a second, he may not get here till the 6th. Just saying. So anyway, that being said, all in favor?
Tony had her hand
Oh,
up.
yes,
I
Tony.
thought- Oh, I apologize.
Oh, all in favor?
Yeah, yeah.
All in favor, none opposed. Thanks, council. Okay, requests and announcements. Request by council to place items on a future agenda. We've got quite a few things going on our future agendas. Anything specific right now you would like to request, council?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
I got enough going on.
All right, item B, announcements by council.
Who announced Thunder in the Hills?
Yes.
You go ahead.
Okay, the 25th, 26th, 27th, and 28th of March is Thunder in the Hill Country. It's our biggest event in this area. Well, I say it's our biggest event. It's one of our biggest events. On the 26th at 7 p.m., council has been invited by Bill Tabor, the organizer of the event, to come out there, be a part of the opening ceremonies, to enjoy the evening as his guest. And if you choose to come at 7 p.m., meet us up front at the Ticket Shack. So, Rebecca.
So I'd like to just mention again that Matt and Linda with Simple City, and I don't know who else from their team, are coming out on March 30th. So as soon as we get better details about what's happening on those days, we will certainly share that out to the public and on Facebook and by whatever means we have available.
And another thing that's coming up is April the 8th, we're going to have the first meeting. I don't know exactly the nature of the meeting or who's going to be attending, but in 2023 and 2024, there are two complete eclipses. Yeah, there's a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. And Bandera and the Hill Country are going to be eclipse central. And if it's anything like the northern part of the nation experienced during 2017, then we need to get prepared for this.
You said it was April 8th.
I sent the invitation.
Did I say the 1st?
No, you said the 8th.
Okay, good. Yeah, April the 8th. I don't have times, I don't have anything else. Yes, Christine.
The Bandera County Chamber of Commerce is having their awards mixer tonight, but I haven't got confirmation that they've made their announcements, so I don't want to say, but they are doing their, the service awards for Business Service Award and the Cowboy Capital Award and Volunteer of the Year and the Wilton Kreider. So I can probably, those will be out in the paper, but I can't say anything until they actually present it
Thank you.
tonight. But those are happening tonight at the Bandera Brewery.
Any further announcement, council? Okay. Item 7's adjourn. Jerry?
Motion to adjourn.
Tony? Discussion? All in favor? All in favor? None opposed? 8:16, this meeting is adjourned.